hello, and welcome back to the continuation of Thingamajigs and another exciting history of a mundane sody pop. Part 2.
Part 2, baby!
When we left off, we discussed the triumphant appearance of the greatest sody pop of all time, root beer. So what's next? Where could we possibly have gone after peaking so hard with root beer?
Well, we get our first cola flavor in 1881. I could not find anything other than that because I don't think it was Coca-Cola. It was just cola. But I couldn't find an inventor or a story, just that it was in 1881. Every time I tried, the only thing that would come up is more information about Coca-Cola. Someone out there with more knowledge about cola drinks might know. If you do, you're welcome to tell me.
What is cola?
It's a nut.
A nut?
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen a cola nut. What's that like? Does it taste like Coke?
It has a lot of caffeine in it. So these are going to go in chronological date order of when the brand was released. So next on our list is my all-time favorite, hands down the best soft drink on the market, Dr. Pepper.
I mean, it's no root beer, but it's definitely the second best.
It's the best. Dr. Pepper was invented in Waco, Texas in 1885 by Charles Alderton. It was born in Morrison's Old Corner Drugstore. That's a long name for a drugstore. And Morrison owned the store, but Charles was the pharmacist there, and he loved the way the drugstore smelled because of the soda fountain and all the syrups. So he decided he wanted to mix his own drink that tasted like the store smells.
Officially, Dr. Pepper is the flavor of a pharmacy.
Yes, technically. An old-timey pharmacy.
That makes it less appealing somehow.
So, of course, he didn't get it right away, but eventually he got a drink mixture he liked, and it was a huge hit. They didn't really know what to call it at first, so people would come in and just tell him that they wanted a Waco. I think that was a pretty good name.
So in an alternate timeline, we could be cracking open an ice-cold Waco.
I suppose.
Probably would have really hurt their business after the incident.
Yeah, probably. People would start calling it Wacko like they call the city. Morrison is the one who named it Dr. Pepper, and we don't really know where that name comes from, but the official Dr. Pepper website says that it was because Morrison was in love with the daughter of a Dr. Charles Pepper. So, if that story's good enough for Dr. Pepper, it's good enough for me.
Sounds like a fib, but alright.
That's funny because that rhymes with Dr. Pibb.
That's where Pibb got their name from fib, because it's a lie.
What is kind of odd about this story is that Alderton, the inventor, wasn't that interested in developing the idea further. He was more interested in his work as a pharmacist, and he told Morrison, just run with it. I wonder if he lived to regret that. But yeah, Morrison eventually hooked up with a drink chemist by the name of Robert Lazenby, and they formed a firm and turned Dr. Pepper into a real brand, and it went to the World's Fair in 1904. Their first slogan was King of Beverages.
Very straight to the point slogan there.
They had like a trademark character called Old Doc who had a top hat and a monocle. Add that to the long list of characters that brands have used with top hats and monocles. It must have been a very popular image at the time. And then we found out that sugar gives you energy, and that most people get tired at 10:30, 2:30, and 4:30. So with that information, they held a contest, and people would send in entries for an ad. The winning ad campaign was drink a bite to eat at 10, 2, and 4.
What?
That was the winner.
That won.
Yep.
Drink a bite to eat.
At 10, 2, and 4.
The heck does that even mean?
They changed it to the Friendly Pepper Upper.
Oh, it's better.
Way better. And you can really see the evolution of maturity in the brand because these are the next few slogans, right up to the most recent. The most misunderstood soft drink.
They went through an emo phase?
The most original soft drink ever in the whole wide world.
Well, they got their confidence back.
Be a pepper.
Oh. I don't know.
Well, they changed it to Be You.
No. Don't be a pepper. That's silly. Be you.
And then the last one, There is just more to it. And that last one is addressing the highly secret 23 flavors that is in Dr. Pepper. If you ever look at the bottle and see the 23 on it, that's what that's about. They tried to advertise Dr. Pepper because their sales were lower in the winter. They tried to advertise Dr. Pepper as a fun, hot winter drink. So you would drink Dr. Pepper hot in the winter, and you would drink nice, cold, refreshing Dr. Pepper in the summer. It did not take.
But we gotta try it. This winter, we need to try a nice hot Dr. Pepper instead of cocoa and compare. See how it goes.
We can certainly try it, but seeing as it was not a popular option, I don't think it's going to be good.
Maybe nobody gave it a chance. Lots of good things didn't stick.
Dr. John Pemberton invented Coca-Cola in Atlanta, Georgia in 1886. But before he did that, he had a fairly successful drink called French wine of coca. But it wasn't a drink that you consumed for a treat. It was considered medicine, and it claimed to cure all kinds of things as of the time it came from. And no wonder it made people feel better. It had wine and cocaine in it.
My kind of night.
It's important for me to mention here that cocaine was not thought of as it is now. It was a new, exciting component. It wasn't thought of as dangerous. We saw nothing but a bright future for cocaine.
I think cocaine got done dirty.
Yeah, kind of like weed.
Yeah, because, okay, disclaimer, I'm not advocating for the use of cocaine necessarily. Drugs are bad. Okay.
I was wondering if you were going to slip into that.
But, nowadays it's like all super processed and mixed with a bunch of crap to refine it and everything. But
yeah, it probably was healthier to just grab a coca leaf and just chew on it and get some of the stimulant out of it.
It's no different that way from a coffee cherry.
Or a coconut. No, a cola nut.
Yeah, a cola nut.
French wine of coca did not taste good. It was bitter, and he knew he was missing a large part of the market by having the wine in it because not everyone drank, and he could make more money if he just sold a normal drink at a soda fountain. So he took the beverage he already had and he took the wine out, but left the coca, or the cocaine, in because, again, we didn't think that much about it, and he added sugar because sugar makes everything better. He sold his drink at a place called Jacob's Pharmacy, and you could get yourself a glass of this new drink for 5 cents.
Sounds expensive. What, do you think we're made of money?
Dr. Pemberton's partner is actually the one who named the drink Coca-Cola. He liked the 2 C's, and he wrote it down on a piece of paper, and his pretty scrolling handwriting is actually the logo for it today.
It is a good name. Probably the best name for anything at that era.
Especially on the first try.
People were terrible at naming things back then.
It didn't go so well at first. Dr. Pemberton's health was also not good. He ended up selling the company and he died. He didn't get to see any of what Coca-Cola was going to be. As far as he knew, he kind of sold a dying company. He sold in 1891 to Asa Candler. Asa Candler.
I've heard of ear candling, but this is ridiculous.
Asa Candler transformed Coca-Cola. Candler was Coke's big break. He saw the potential, and he had the ideas to launch Coca-Cola into a recognizable brand. This is someone who understood advertising extremely well. He put their logo on everything. It is the reason why we have all of this old Coca-Cola memorabilia. Because he sunk a ton of money into spreading that logo far and wide on literally everything. Not only did he do that, but he had free drink coupons made because he was convinced that if people just tried it, they would love it, be hooked, and come back for more, which is funny because it had a cocaine in it, and that is what all of our parents told us would happen if we tried drugs.
First time's free.
Right. They give you the first hit for free. so you get hooked and come back for more. That's literally what Coke did. And it worked. By the 1900s, Coca-Cola was selling gobs of syrup, like 250,000 gallons. But at the same time, they were faced with a problem. We, as a society, kind of turned on cocaine and learned that it was addictive, and they thought it was linked to crime, and everyone kind of turned their heads and looked at Coca-Cola and said, well, what are you going to do about that? As the FDA is telling you, you have to remove the coca part of your cola, which is, a huge part of the flavor.
It's half of their name.
So they had to find a way to keep using coca leaf while getting rid of the active cocaine part. And of course they did. That made it sound easy. It wasn't easy, but they did it. They kept on rolling, selling their syrups, and people didn't turn their backs. They kept going to the soda fountain and asking for a refreshing Coca-Cola. But in 1899, which if you remember from part 1, is an important date for the bottling world. So these two men, I believe they were lawyers, came to Mr. Candler and asked if they could buy the bottling rights to Coca-Cola. And at the time, bottling was seen as difficult, expensive, dirty. Good people weren't exactly associated with bottling. On top of that, the product wouldn't last long in a bottle because proper caps for keeping the already nasty, hard-to-make bottles were not well known. So Mr. Candler said, yeah, sure, I'll sell it to you for $1. And he sold the bottling rights to Coca-Cola for $1. Now that is easy to look back and say, wow, you really scored. But it was just as much of a gamble for them as any other business decision. This was not an obvious hole-in-one. There was a lot that had to be accomplished in the bottling world before it became obvious that this was a good deal. A deal of the decade, maybe even the century. It was $1.
So $1 back then was about $35 today. Could you imagine if you went out to Coca-Cola Company's headquarters and was like, hey, can I have your bottling rights for $35? And they were like, sure. Instant billionaire.
Once that new cap came and the glass blowing machine, it was like that. They were millionaires overnight. As we've already talked about, the bottling industry boomed, and Coca-Cola continued their innovation of making themselves instantly recognizable. There was a problem with bottled beverages at first where you couldn't really tell the difference between all of these brown liquids in glass bottles. They obviously didn't have plastic labels with bright colors. All they had was their name, like built into the bottle, but it was clear and hard to read, so Coke designed their own bottle with a unique shape that was instantly recognizable. You could feel the difference whenever you held it. They wanted it to be recognizable in the dark, or if it was like broken, you could tell that's a Coke bottle.
That nice hourglass shape that we know.
Mm-hmm.
We know and live. It's pretty iconic.
I didn't put this in my notes, but Coca-Cola had a hard time in the World Wars because obviously sugar was rationed, but they cut a deal with the military that they would provide Coca-Cola for the soldiers, and that made them exempt from the sugar rations. Now we move on to Coke's arch rival, Pepsi. Which, Ben, you are a Pepsi guy when given the choice between Coke and Pepsi, that is. So Pepsi was invented by Caleb Broadham in 1893. Well, sort of. It was more like 1898. He was a 26-year-old pharmacist from North Carolina, and obviously he has a soda fountain at his drugstore. So he starts experimenting with the flavors, and he comes up with a combination that he likes. He includes vanilla, cola nuts, and he names it Brad's Drink. He eventually renames it Pepsi Cola in 1898, and that's why it has 2 dates.
Good choice.
He wasted some time on the name Brad's Drink.
Oh, Brad.
I'm shocked it took him that long to figure out that was a bad name. No one wants to say, I'm real thirsty, hand me a Brad.
I'll have a Brad's.
I'd rather just drink water. So he patents it, and the first Pepsi Cola company opens in 1902. And once you do that, the first thing you do is tell people about it. So he gets some advertising going. And he sells 7,968 gallons in his first year with the slogan, exhilarating, invigorating, aids digestion. One of those things is not like the other. It's like two friends were pumping each other up and then one of their moms reminds them to take a Tums. I guess it worked because in 1904 his sales increased to 19,848 gallons. In 1906, Pepsi gets a logo change, and you can tell they are going for that Coca-Cola look. It's just Pepsi Cola written in red and a very cursive print. And they keep that going for a while, like into the 60s. It took them a long time before they settled on their, I'm not really sure what it is, but it looks like a marble made of blue and red.
Yeah, I used to like digging through marbles to find a marble that looked like the Pepsi logo.
Anyway, so they get a logo change, and they get a new slogan. The original pure food drink.
What? What does that mean?
I know, I don't know why they keep trying to replace food with drink. Remember Dr. Pepper's a bite to drink? What is this?
Have a snack, a bite of drink. Terrible. What are they doing?
Their syrup sales are still rising. They're now at 38,605 gallons. So one thing that Pepsi has kind of always relied on is celebrity endorsement. And this started pretty early because in 1909, Pepsi hired race car driver Barney Oldfield. And we don't know who that is, but people of the early 1900s did. It was impressive when Barney told them to drink Pepsi, it'll satisfy you.
Remember when people were named Barney?
And then the purple dinosaur just really ruined it. Things were going well. Pepsi was one of the first drink companies to modernize delivery with a motor vehicle. They're selling over 100,000 gallons of syrup, but World War I was difficult on, well, everyone, but also Pepsi, because the price of sugar changed a lot, and Caleb thought it was only going to get worse, so he purchased a lot of overpriced sugar and then was stuck with massive quantities of overpriced sugar once the price of sugar fell again. So Pepsi went bankrupt and he had to sell, and it traded hands a lot after that. It wasn't until 1931 that Pepsi was bought by Lofty Candy Company, where they tried to sell it to Coke, and Coke turned them down.
Wow.
Which is wild. If they would have known the money they could have saved, if they would have just bought their competitor when it wasn't doing so hot.
There's an alternate timeline out there where Coke owns all of the beverages.
I bet they regret that. But Pepsi bounced back. They rebranded and with the slogan, twice as much for a nickel. Because they were selling 12-ounce bottles and Coke was selling 6-ounce bottles. This was during the Depression, so this was a really big deal. Like 10 cents might be all you had for fun money, and if you had that. And that could get you a 12-ounce Pepsi and a movie ticket. Obviously, you were going to go with the 12-ounce Pepsi because that's an hour-and-a-half movie. Then they scored a hit radio jingle that played all across the country. It was called Nickel Nickel. You can look it up. I'm not going to sing it.
Aww.
During World War II, they made sure they didn't make the sugar mistake again, and they used it to get their product recognizable overseas, and it worked because Pepsi stayed and the troops came home. In 1950, Alfred Steele became Pepsi's president and CEO, which is really slick on Pepsi's part because Mr. Steele used to be Coca-Cola's vice president. And he, coming from Coke, knew very well how marketing worked. And he learned from the best. And then Pepsi got this bright new idea. They were going to be the drink of the young people. But what's funny about that statement is they got that idea after World War II, which means that the young people were the baby boomers. So the boomers were the first Pepsi generation.
Ain't that something?
They were always trying to catch the young people. That's why they added Diet Pepsi. Now, they weren't the first to put a diet drink on the market, but they did it to target young people. And they really kept with that Pepsi generation bit. Every young person coming up thought they were the Pepsi generation. And I mean, they were, but they seemed to think they were the first, like this was a new thing. You know, their parents are old Coke people, and they're the clean, crisp, new Pepsi drinkers. I mean, it worked. That's exactly what they were supposed to think. But it's just funny to me that boomers were the first Pepsi generation. Pepsi hired Michael Jackson to be its spokesperson, and they hired a lot of other people over the years. Like I said, Pepsi has always used celebrities. Pepsi was doing so well that Coke got scared and changed their formula to New Coke. And that was terrible, so they went back to Coke Classic, and then Pepsi made a huge misstep with Crystal Pepsi. And so the cola wars go on.
You know, it's kind of funny because Pepsi brought back Crystal Pepsi and it did pretty well. I'll bet if Coke released a new Coke, like the re-release of that formula alongside Classic, I'll bet a bunch of people would buy it.
Timing is really important for releasing something because the product that you release might not be a bad product, but if you release it at a bad time, it's going to get labeled a bad product. It might just be me that I don't care, but I feel like we just don't care as much about Coke versus Pepsi. They taste the same. I don't feel like the cola wars are still going. I might be wrong about that, but it doesn't seem to be on a lot of young people's minds that who's winning.
Yeah.
We have more important things to think about. So Charles Lipergrig, he invented his first soft drink in 1919. It was an orange-flavored drink that he called Whistle. But he got into a fight with management and he quit his job and lost his drink and started over where he invented Howdy, also an orange drink. This time, when he quits his job, he took Howdy with him and tried to start his own business. But he was being orange crushed. Badoosh. So he shifted his focus to lemon lime drinks in 1929. So he invented a new lemon lime flavor and called it Bib Label Lithiated Lemon Lime Soda.
This is what I'm talking about. People were not good at naming things.
The name was changed to 7-Up Lithiated Lemon Soda, in which you can see where we're going now.
Sprite.
No. 7-Up came way before Sprite.
Sierra Mist.
You missed that one.
That was good.
Thank you. He finally shortened it again in 1936 to just 7-Up. And finally something different, am I right, after all those cola beverages? I feel like 7-Up is not as popular today, but it really hit a peak in the 40s all through the 60s. So that lithiated part is important. Lithium is a drug that was pretty common in patent medicines. It's like a mood stabilizer. It was used to improve your mood, and it was advertised as such. They knew. And again, the depression. It was meant to be for their depression. I would have been looking for something to improve my mood. But as how all good things must come to an end, it was taken out in 1948. A bit of a bummer, but probably good for humanity. Not long after this, they did get a Disney gig where they had this character called Fresh Up Freddy. He was a little bird, a little rooster. And that helped the drink become popular with children. 7-Up became really popular when they started trying to separate themselves from Coke and Pepsi by calling themselves Uncola.
I like it.
There was like this ad where a hand sat down an ice-cold glass of brown liquid in front of the camera, but then those hands like flipped it around and tore off the brown film, and in the glass was a clear, bubbly drink with the 7-Up logo on the glass. I thought that was pretty clever. But in 1961, Coke released Sprite, and that was kind of it for 7-Up. At least that was the end of their peak. Also, Pepsi had their own lemon lime drink called Slice. I have never heard of that. Where did that go?
I'd definitely seen it before. I remember seeing it, but they discontinued it in the late 2000s.
I'm not surprised. No one knew about it.
It definitely wasn't popular, but yeah, I remember it.
So 7-Up is now owned by Keurig Dr. Pepper, which I didn't know that was a thing either. I didn't know that Keurig bought Dr. Pepper.
Pretty lame.
And Snapple, because wasn't it Dr. Pepper's Snapple company or something, and then Keurig bought it? 7-Up got wrapped up into all of that. Mountain Dew. That's all.
It'll tickle your innards.
They started with Mountain Dew. They are still rocking Mountain Dew as a name. I know people who call it Dew, but they think they're cool. Or they're trying to be ironic and make fun of the people who think they're cool. That's when I lose track of whether they're cool or not. Regular people call it Mountain Dew. It was invented by two brothers from Tennessee, another Barney. It was Barney and Allie Hartman in the 1940s. It was a lemon lime drink. They mainly wanted it as a mixer for whiskey. Now let's not forget that this is when the height of 7-Up reigned, so they had a very hard time getting established. Also, Mountain Dew is an old nickname for moonshine. Also, their label was of a hillbilly named Willie. And as you've already stated, their slogan was Mountain Dew will tickle your innards. So, not the classiest of drinks. Oh, and they packed it full of caffeine.
Yeah, they did. Those are all reasons to love Mountain Dew.
But even with all of that effort, it wasn't the brothers that catapulted Mountain Dew to its high place in soda rankings. Well, it wasn't really this new guy either, but they all built upon each other's work. So Bill Bridgforth, he updated the recipe to include Tang, that drink that people make fun of for being bad. This is around 1961. But then Pepsi bought the Tip Corporation, which is who owned Mountain Dew, so they were kind of swept up in the purchase. And they decided to keep with the Willie the Hillbilly motif. They were like, yeah, this is fine. We'll just keep going with this. Wait, no. Let's change the slogan. I'm not feeling the tickle anymore. You know what I am feeling? Barefoot. So they changed it to get that barefoot feeling.
That's different.
They changed it again to put a little Yahoo in your life. And also, hello sunshine, hello Mountain Dew. That one was a bit more of a song, but it gets another recipe change in 1974, which is appropriate because now it has that neon green color and we are steadily approaching the 80s. Timing, it's everything. It reached peak Mountain Dew, and we are moving away from Willie and into a more generalized outdoorsy vibe. We are entering the I'm an extreme sport drink phase. Crazy rebel people drink me because they're cool.
So ironic given its current demographic.
What's their current demographic, Ben?
People who play video games and tired college students.
They did go on to make other flavors, but original Mountain Dew is still the favorite. Oh, and it's been banned in Japan, the Netherlands, and the European Union, which I guess only makes it cooler.
It's probably good. Pretty vile. I mean, it's delicious and I love it, but it's pretty vile.
It ranks 5th in popularity. There's a lot of sodas out there, and Mountain Dew is 5th. That is... why? Nothing neon should go in your body. You'd think I'd like it more because I love orange drinks. And it has orange flavoring in it, but I'm just not about that. Also, it has far too much caffeine in it for me.
It's good for staying awake in class. I can tell you that.
And last on our list that we will be covering, because this is already a 2-parter, Fanta. Yes, it is Fanta, not Fanta. One of my first conversations that I remember having with your brother Nathan, also featured on this podcast, was him telling me it's wanna Fanta, not wanna Fanta.
Wanta Fanta.
I don't know why, but that's like the first conversation I remember having with him. That could not have been the first thing that we said to each other, but that's what I remember.
Go back and listen to the calendars episode if you want to meet my brother Nathan.
So Coca-Cola had been in Germany since 1929, and in 1933, a German man named Max Kite took over the German Coca-Cola subsidiary. And he was very proud of both Coca-Cola and Germany. And because the world didn't know yet what would be going down in Germany in just a few years, Coca-Cola sponsored the 1936 Berlin Olympics, which featured banners with the Coca-Cola brand logo alongside the swastika. Because the swastika didn't really mean anything yet. But boy, do those pictures of that banner not hold up today. That picture aged like a dead porcupine in the August sun.
Are there photographs of this?
Yes, there are.
Wonderful.
Coca-Cola was very slow to acknowledge what was happening in Germany. In 1939, when Hitler invaded Europe and Coca-Cola still supplied Germany with the syrup it needed to make Coke, by the 1940s, Coke, at least within Europe, was starting to become the soft drink king of Nazis. But then Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, and America had to face the fact that she was getting involved, which meant that Coca-Cola couldn't supply Germany anymore. So Kite couldn't make Coke, and he really didn't want the Nazi government to take his company, so he had to come up with a new drink for the people of Germany. And not to admire this, but he was doing this under extremely difficult circumstances. He had no ingredients to work with. He was using leftovers from the food industry, which meant all he had was stuff like fruit shavings, apple pulp, beet sugar, and whey, which is a leftover milk curdling to make other products. That doesn't sound good. Not exactly premium stuff. But they pulled it off. And they named it Fanta, which is the shortening of the word Fantasie, which means fantasy in German. Very whimsical. Fantasie.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Fanta or Fanta. A garbage beverage made of garbage and scraps for Nazis.
Pretty much. So because sugar was so hard to get during World War II, people would use Fanta for other cooking needs. And I mean, talk about the perfect market for it. There aren't any other options, and you need a sugar fix. Coca-Cola was very thankful to him for keeping the brand alive in Germany. They gave him Coca-Cola Europe. Because they couldn't assist him in any kind of way. So to Coke, he was a bit of a hero.
You heard it here first, folks. Coca-Cola, grateful for the support of Nazis.
It was said many times that Kite was not a Nazi party, but obviously he did go along with it because you're not going to have a successful business without supporting Hitler in some kind of way. They really pressed how faithful he was to the Coca-Cola brand.
This is why I'm actually a Pepsi drinker. That's the kind of company Coca-Cola is.
I guess it was a happy story for him. Coke relaunched Fanta as an orange drink, and I think Coke just assumed people would forget about its Nazi roots, which they kind of did. I don't think the average, at least American, knows about this. You know about it now because you listen to this podcast. But not many people listen to this podcast, so that's it, buddy. Got some fun facts.
Lay it on me.
This probably shouldn't be in fun facts, but there is a tentative evidence that carbonated water may help with constipation among people who have had strokes. I got this from a Wikipedia, and it had a citation, but I did not get into it. This is me giving you this weird thing that might be tentatively true. It was just weirdly specific. I wanted to share it.
Specifically, people who've had strokes. Doesn't help anyone else.
I don't know.
It's a weird one.
Heads Up 7-Up, the children's game, might come from the drink 7-Up. We don't know. But that's interesting. It's a weird game we played in middle school where everyone closes their eyes and sticks their thumbs up and someone comes and puts your thumb down and you blindly guess who touched you. Unless you cheated, and then you still guess wrong so no one thinks you cheated, but so you could find out if the person you like touched your thumb, because that was a sign that they might like you. Did you ever play Heads Up 7-Up?
No, it sounds stupid.
You've never played Heads Up 7-Up when you were a kid?
No, it sounds stupid. No offense, Heads Up 7-Up lovers. Doesn't sound fun.
One of the ways that 7-Up tried to promote themselves over cola beverages was they touted being caffeine-free. Look at all these other beverages that have caffeine, but we're a safe beverage for your children. And then Coke and Pepsi and other companies started coming out with caffeine-free options. Obviously, that was threatening enough to gain some movement in other companies. I'm not a big fan of lemon lime soda.
I think it's Nice and refreshing.
Yeah.
On a nice hot day when you got ice cold Sprite or Sierra Mist.
Why'd you say that so creepy?
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just saying it the way you're supposed to say it. It's called Sierra Mist.
The only time I consume lemon lime carbonated beverage is in like a punch, where you take sherbet and lemon lime and you mix it together to make a... You always have them at showers for some reason. For some reason, that is the one beverage you can always guarantee at a women's gathering.
That is a good beverage, though. You get some 7-Up and you get some sherbet ice cream. You fill a bowl up with 7-Up and you dunk some sherbet ice cream in it. And it's really good.
After learning all of this, though, I think whenever I do buy a lemon lime drink, I think I'll go for 7-Up over Sprite.
I support that. Unless you like Sierra Mist.
I don't think we're ever going to buy Sierra Mist because you keep saying it like that.
If you go to Taco Bell, they exclusively serve Sierra Mist as their lemon lime beverage. One time I went there and I was like, yeah, let me get a Sprite. And they were like, we don't have Sprite. Is a Sierra Mist okay? And I was like, I guess. What's the difference? Apparently, it's pretty divisive, though. There are fans of each beverage who oppose the other. I didn't know about all this until recently.
I really like fruity carbonated beverages, especially since I can't think of one that has caffeine in it. They're almost all caffeine free.
I'm a big fan of root beer. I love root beer.
I really like Dr. Pepper, but I have to drink it early enough in the day or else it will bother me. It will interrupt my sleep.
Well, that's the end of the show. This has been Thingamajigs and another exciting history of a mundane thing.
Thanks for sticking around for part 2.
At least we hope you stuck around through both parts. If you didn't, we'll know and we'll be very sad. You break our hearts. Anywho, don't forget to grab a goose and a hot cup of Dr. Pepper.
I'm told it's better if you put a slice of lemon in it.
Thanks for listening.
I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. It's hot Dr. Pepper.
Nah.